Stopping killers such as the ones in Texas is a relatively easy thing to do if you have intelligence, if you've been on their trail, and if you have $30,000 of additional security on hand. So finding out that our government had a handle on at least one of those murderers before he started to fire on anything moving makes us pause and wonder if the feds could have done something much earlier to intercept a pair of religious zealots. The genocide no one wants to talk about, the ridiculous celebrations in Baltimore, Gloria Allred and Dick Morris also on the dance card. I'm Ed Berliner. Let's take a hard line for Wednesday, May 6th, 2015.
Today we come together to bring a conclusion to this incredible effort that this team was responsible for last week to end the violence in Baltimore City. As of this morning, I am pleased to report that all National Guard, state police, and other police personnel, and all the assets that we brought in have now been removed from the city.
The AIDS epidemic is not over, and America's continued leadership is critical. There is a window of opportunity before us, a window through which we can very clearly see the end of AIDS within my lifetime.
We have state issues with state actors, and we've got a large body of non-state actors, ISIL, Al-Qaeda, other groups that have aligned themselves. And for the first time in my career, they are both manifesting themselves simultaneously. This is not a time to be withdrawing from the world.
Our guest is president of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund and a former assistant director of the Criminal Investigative Division of the FBI. Let's welcome Ron Hosko to the Hardline. Ron, thanks so much for joining us.
Sure. Good afternoon, Ed.
Ron, with regard to what happened in Texas, in your opinion, as a lawman, somebody who's been around for a long time, was this event freedom of speech, or was this, as the FBI or others might look at it, as a ploy to incite violence?
Well, certainly the underlying event, the cartoon event, is something that in our world today, particularly to radical Islam, is something that's incendiary. It's provocative. So, to U.S. citizens, you're allowed to engage in this speech and in certain acts that test the limits of First Amendment freedoms. To others on the other side of the globe, not so much. This is very provocative, and we've seen attacks by them before for just this reason. The FBI needs a certain level of predication. There's a reason to open an investigation, and that depends on the facts that are going to be specific from event to event. And somebody who is merely watching ISIS beheading videos or other, inflammatory videos, that is not enough for the FBI certainly to act, although they may start to monitor. There's going to be a progression of events that leads the FBI to act materially and to interdict something. They could have surveillance up, and we are watching the subject engage with people overseas, engage in his circle of friends. And one of the great difficulties for the FBI is, what if there are no co-conspirators? It's somebody sitting in their own basement watching videos and are motivated to act because there's been a call to action and there's no pre-event indicator.
When they say that ISIS took responsibility, we've already got people out here saying, wait a minute, it's not real. The responsibility, they can say that any time, but people who are sympathizers, those are the tough ones to find.
Absolutely. And you're going to have folks who are just looking. They're on the internet. They may be looking at all the right websites that the FBI may well be looking at as well and monitoring traffic over. And you're going to have some folks who are posers, who are talking a lot, talking a big game, but really have no intention of committing any act. And then you're going to have folks who are truly motivated, who may not leave you a telltale sign. And deciding and dividing that up among those different categories can be very, very challenging.
I have a minute left here, and I know this is a difficult question, but many people are going to ask this because we talk about having to profile someone. We talk about having to focus on those whom we believe could be a danger. Is it fair to say that the FBI and other government agencies will spend more time looking at someone with an Islamic connection, with a connection to the Middle East, with a birth connection, if you will, or a family connection, because those seem to be the more likely to commit these kinds of crimes?
Yeah, I think there is going to be an amalgam, and certainly that would play a piece in it. The FBI is looking for those who do have a significant connection But the other end of the connection is really radicalized, radical Islam, known players, known facilitators, known enablers, typically in the Middle East, who are engaging in this sort of thought and belief and are propagating it.
I've got about 20 seconds left here, Ron. Is one of your biggest fears is that we're just getting lucky at this point and that sooner or later someone's going to slip through the net, we simply can't find him, and it's going to be even worse?
Right. Great credit to the Garland police officer who took down a very serious threat with a handgun. That is not always going to happen. There are going to be other soft targets out there, targets of opportunity, and my fear is that one will slip into the net, and it will be a serious one with catastrophic results.
We need to continue to follow up whatever it is between the FBI and the other investigative agencies. They need to be able to do their job. And again, you're right, putting it very well. Credit to the officer who was on hand and those who helped protect us. Ron Hosko, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to the next time we get a chance to speak.
My pleasure, Evan.
Now from the aspect of those who organized the show in Garland, Texas, the one that featured a $10,000 prize for the person who turned in the best of what the judges would consider characterizations of the Prophet Muhammad, an event that has now led to a death threat against one of the organizers. Our guest is attorney at the American Freedom Law Center. He represents the American Freedom Defense Initiative, the event organizers, and pushes forward the belief that what his clients did was merely freedom of speech and must be protected. Robert Muise is on the hard line. Robert, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Robert, let's go ahead and discuss the freedom of speech, because that seems to be where this is all focusing on and where, quite frankly, a lot of people are looking at. According to the First Amendment, in Cohen versus California, 1971, it is freedom of speech to use certain offensive words and phrases to convey political messages, which would seem is what was done here, in accordance with the First Amendment. But according to that amendment as well, it also states that in Schenck versus the United States in 1919, it is against the freedom of speech to incite actions that would harm others. Which one are we on here? Because it would seem, quite frankly, as if this event did both.
No, it's pure speech protected by the First Amendment. Brandenburg, which is the latest case dealing with incitement speech, the speech itself has to advocate for violence. This was pure political speech, fully protected under the First Amendment. And bear in mind, one of the parts of this story that's not being reported quite well is the fact that this was in response to an event that was held at that same forum months earlier that was entitled Stand with the Prophet. And it was in response to the Charlie Hebdo shooting. So you had this Muslim organization who had this event that was essentially saying, look, we ought to have in place blasphemy laws to prevent the sort of speech that Charlie Hebdo was engaging in, and implicitly supporting the violent response to that. And so those who want to curtail speech and describe it as, blasphemy laws or hate speech, and there's no such thing in the First Amendment for those particular categories, Pam Geller her event was a direct response to that, where really, if you want to describe it, was really defiant speech. She's defying those terrorists who would use violent acts to suppress our fundamental American freedom, the freedom of speech, as well as those government officials who would use, political correctness to silence such speech. So she was very courageous, and this wasn't about, cartoons. Indeed, the violence that was shown by those Islamic terrorists does more to defame Islam than any cartoon would. But this is purely protected speech under any case law that you want to cite to related to the First Amendment. There's no question about it.
And we've got about 45 seconds left. ISIS now has put out a statement, and they claim that Pam Geller, who is the AFDI chairman, the head of AFDI, is now one of their targets. How does she plan to change her actions, if any, and when will the next cartoon contest be?
Well, when she's been engaged in this battle space, really there's been a willful blindness going on, and when she's sounding the clarion call of this threat, this Islamic threat, she's had death threats before this one. She has personal security. She has for many, many years now. So this is really, unfortunately, this is nothing new, that when she engages in provocative speech, that people engage in criminal acts, such as, threatening her with death. But, she's a courageous woman, and, she should be applauded for waking up the American conscience to this.
Okay, very
this
briefly, Robert, I'm all out of time here, but have they set a date for the next event? Because Robert Spencer told us they were going to do this again.
Yeah, no, I don't know aware of any next event that's actually scheduled, but we certainly will be there defending their right to do so.
And Robert Spencer also partnered with Pam Geller of the AFDI as well. Robert Muise, we appreciate you putting some legalese to this. It's something we're going to follow for a long time to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, stay with us. This is the fastest 60 minutes in news talk. The Hard Line continues.